We have quite a number of participants already. That's wonderful. And thank you for coming. So welcome to the workshop addressing newcomers' digital literacy gaps and facilitating their integration through digital education. Bienvenue au atelier Renforcer les compétences numériques des nouveaux arrivants et faciliter leur intégration grâce à la formation numérique. As the chair of this workshop, I'd like to begin with our combined land acknowledgement and then introduce my co-presenters. This is a bilingual workshop, but we will all present in English. There will be some slides in French. You can ask your questions in English or French at the end of the session. And please use the Q&A function to ask your questions. You can also post comments in the chat, I believe. The work of Toronto Metropolitan University and the Toronto South Local Immigration Partnership takes place in Toronto. On the traditional territories of the Wendat, Anishinaabe, the Chippewa, the Haudenosaunee Confederacy, and most recently, the Mississauga of the Credit First Nation. New Language Solutions is based on the traditional unceded territory of the Algonquin Anishinaabe people in Ottawa, working in locations across Canada. We encourage staff and clients to discover whose traditional territories they're on and pause to reflect on the hospitality shown to us as guests in these territories. As agencies that work to support the integration of newcomers into Canadian society and cultures, we resolve to support activities that are inclusive of Indigenous people. So let me introduce our panelists today. Juan Marcial is currently Director, Research, Special Projects at the Diversity Institute at the Ted Rogers School of Management at Toronto Metropolitan University. He leads work for the Future Skills Center, including action research projects focused on skills development and pathways to employment for newcomers and refugees. Alma Betancourt is the supervisor of language programs with the Newcomer Programs and Services Department at Wood Green Community Services. She collaborates with the Toronto South Local Immigration Partnership in the Newcomer Services Collaboration Group and co-authored TSLIP's 2024 report, Digital Literacy Gaps in the Newcomer Sector. My colleague Sophie Bonny is the French as a second language department lead for Avenue, contributing as a course designer and mentor. Since joining New Language Solutions in 2019, her experiences as a newcomer in 4 countries have shaped her commitment to supporting effective and inclusive language training. Another one of my colleagues, Gilles Aubry, is a specialist in French as a second language with more than 30 years of experience using a variety of approaches. He has also been a content designer and teaching materials and trainer in the use of new technology for many years. Unfortunately, Gilles cannot be with us today after all, but he sends his regrets. And I myself, Matthias Sturm, I have been with New Language Solutions as researcher and evaluator for the Avenue Learn IT to Teach project since the beginning. I also work towards a PhD researching digital equity among newcomers and the role of instructors in supporting their settlement. And now, with further ado, Juan, please take it from here.
Thank you very much, Matthias. I believe everyone can see this the presentation. So, well, hello, bonjour, everyone. My name is Juan Marcial. As Matthias mentioned, I'm a Director of Research Special Projects at the Diversity Institute. And today on my presentation, I'm going to be focusing on one of our programs, and that is the Advanced Digital and Professional Training for Newcomers, as I will be referring to it as ADAPT, which is the catchier name, if you will, that we use for that program. So I will just say a few words about the Diversity Institute before I dive into ADAPT for Newcomers. And then I'm going to contextualize it a little bit as well on within some other programs that we are doing at the Diversity Institute before just wrapping up with some of the key lessons learned, if you will. Now, the Diversity Institute, we've been around for 25 years here at the TMU, at Toronto Metropolitan University, and have really been working on a variety of tracks, if you will. One of them, as Matthias mentioned, the Future Skill, we're the research lead for the Future Skills Center, which is where my own team works more directly, but we're also an ecosystem partner for the 50/30 Challenge, and the founder of the Women Entrepreneurship Knowledge Hub. But all put together, a lot of our work in many senses, focusing on identifying through action-based research on what works and really looking at innovations and trying to find ways in which those can be replicated, and so we can scale those best practices, all of which aiming at, in a broader sense, building an inclusive economic system. Now, to contextualize a little bit the discussion of ADAPT and ADAPT for Newcomers more specifically, I just wanted to highlight some of the contextual pieces. One of them being that, of course, employment more specifically and economic integration more broadly really are, there's a lot of research showing how top-rated a priority it really is for newcomers. And that goes beyond just a simple and commonsensical idea of we need money to, pay the bills and buy food and pay rent, but really the idea of a deeper sort of fulfillment of, for many newcomers, of feelings of belonging, feelings of contributing to a society. Employment and economic integration in that sense have a really important role in that process. Another important piece, as you'll see in my discussion today, is really the focus on SMEs. Small and medium enterprises are really the key employers in the private sector, in the upwards of 90% of employment in the private sector in our economy, really focusing on SMEs that face many challenges and obstacles in recruiting talent and addressing skills gaps and labor shortages that many businesses face, but something that especially hits SMEs. And many of the employment programs that are available for newcomers are affected by all kinds of challenges of their own, like fragmented funding, lack of connections to employers, and so on, resulting in a situation where many programs end up training newcomers for imaginary jobs in many senses, really just training them in ways that are not really conducive to really achieving and building those pathways to employment. Now, an example of a program that is trying to bring together the skills training for newcomers as well as the focus on employers is ADAPT. As I mentioned, the Advanced Digital and Professional Training program. Now, ADAPT has been developed initially as sometimes what we call ADAPT Core, but ADAPT has also been adapted, pun intended, for many specific populations, like ADAPT for Newcomers, which I'll be focusing on a bit more. But we also have put in place ADAPT for Black youth, ADAPT for Success, which is a version of ADAPT that's really focusing on the skills for success, and so on. But ADAPT more generally, in all its iterations, in all its incarnations, at heart is an employer-focused, work-integrated learning program that really is designed to meet the needs of the newcomers or the participants by providing key critical skills training and support. And this is training in-demand skills. And one of the ways in which we determine which skills, foundational skills, professional skills, technical skills, digital skills, really comes from the other part, if you will, of ADAPT, which is working very closely and engaging with employers to better identify their needs. So it's this two-pronged approach that I'll get to in the next slide, but really is working with the participants, curating those participants, selecting them very carefully, but also working with employers to identify their needs. And for employers, ADAPT also provides training on EDI to help, in a sense, prep the employer as well as prepping the newcomer in trying to build prepping the newcomer for the job, but prepping the employer for the newcomer to try and connect those two effectively. And here we see some of the results of this. From January 2022 to April of this year, we trained 256 immigrants with very high placement rates and very high satisfaction rates. So here's some elements of this proven model of ADAPT that I just wanted to underline. Some of them being just the fact that it's set up in a way to really provide employers with top-tier entry-level talent. And another important thing for access is the no-cost element for participants. And the idea, and here comes the idea of the curation that I mentioned. Really, there is a lot of interviewing and a lot of careful selection, both of employers that need that talent and those demands, as well as participants. And it's that careful curation and matchmaking that really is behind a lot of the success when it comes to the placement. And here I have a bit of an idea of what this approach works like. First, ADAPT does a needs assessment, both from the learner end and the employer side. So from the learner end, that helps, and that understanding of the needs from both ends really is key in doing that matching that I was talking about. And from that, we develop the program delivery for learners, as I mentioned earlier, and I'll show in a couple of slides some examples of the modules that are presented to the and delivered to the learners, but then also offering the EDI training for the employers. Then we move to that recruitment and that matching, and then the learners then get the training that they get in that work integrated learning, and the employers, on the other hand, get internships and on-the-job training for these new hires, which are oftentimes really top talent for them. And the impact has been quite significant. These numbers talking about ADAPT more broadly, as I mentioned earlier, ADAPT Core, as we call it. And since 2014, we see that over 1,800 participants have been trained with those same similar placement and satisfaction rates that I mentioned earlier, more specifically for newcomers. Now, shifting gears a little bit and funneling in a bit more on ADAPT for newcomers, the idea with this version of ADAPT really was to pilot it to try and meet and address the very specific needs and situation of newcomers, really reaching a population that in many senses, as I mentioned earlier, oftentimes falls prey to other kinds of skills development training that does not really fully help them directly. We've had 2 specific cohorts that were launched for newcomers. Newcomers can also participate in ADAPT Core, by the way. That's why those higher numbers also come from. But we have developed specific cohorts for newcomers. And some characteristics of those 2 cohorts had to do with adapting the curriculum to a bit more specifically to the needs and to the skills level, especially of newcomer youth, right? Making and working with them and with the employers around questions of language deficit, for example. So some adaptations of the ADAPT model to address that. Other things like in the application process, which for the ADAPT Core, which is geared at last year undergraduate students mainly, included education references, professional references, loosening that or changing that for newcomers who oftentimes have to rely on other sorts of references from their community, for example. So here, to give you a sense of some of the workshops and modules that are presented in order to develop those skills that I mentioned earlier. Many professional skills, career building skills, as well as more technical digital skills that are offered in these in the group of courses that are offered to the participants. Also, very importantly, wraparound supports are offered, right? And this is key to ADAPT as a whole, and especially for ADAPT for newcomers. Other kinds of things that really help the participants succeed in this program is offering things like coaching and interview prep, and really a white glove service in many senses, of really working with them one-on-one to really help them prepare. The results here are some of the results that I mentioned already, but I also wanted to point to some of the numbers when it comes to the training of employers. Over 660 employers were engaged in EDI training, and over 350 SMEs having completed the diversity assessment tool, which I'll mention in one minute. I also want to just very quickly, and happy to talk about this during the discussion afterwards, is the Newcomer Entrepreneurship Hub program that we also offered. Another track, not exactly falling under ADAPT, but also another very interesting program that we offer at DI. And here we see the diversity. That's also another very, very interesting and important point to highlight, is over 50% of these participants, women, a significant number racialized people. And here we also have stats for other groups, such as persons with disabilities and members of the 2S LGBTQ+ community. The results that we've gotten from newcomers' participation in ADAPT are also encouraging when it comes to skills, with fairly noticeable in self-assessment of improvement of skills around career planning, significant ones for digital skills, as well as business finance. We are looking a little bit more closely into the communication skills as to why exactly we have a more stable result. But the overall combined change in skills across the various skills, we see an 8% shift there. Now, the diversity assessment tool that I mentioned earlier is one of the key things that we use for the training of employers. And this is an online tool, a free online tool that DI offers to help companies identify where they're at in these various dimensions in their EDI journey, and provides them with best practices for them to then be able to put in place measures to improve where they're at in the various dimensions. Again, also happy to talk more about that during the discussion period, because it's a very, very interesting program. Now, as I mentioned, and coming closer to the end, just to contextualize a bit, ADAPT for newcomers really falls within a broader program at DI of building pathways to employment for newcomers. And the idea with this program includes a Lifeline Challenge, which is a project that DI works with that really targets refugees, especially from Afghanistan, but not only. We've also started working with refugees from Ukraine and other countries. And this is really approaching it with a trauma-informed approach, trauma-informed wraparound supports, and helping them connect to employers through platform like Magnet. Right, and here we see a lot of potential of matching these job seekers with the employers that are on that platform as well. Here's just a visual of all that I said in terms of the work of the pathways to newcomers, the work with employers, as well as the various areas of work with newcomers to try and build those pathways for that successful economic integration. So just to end, I wanted to hit on some key points here. The first one being that work integrated learning really is a very, very powerful tool for newcomers. right? And there's other data that is coming from ADAPT that's showing that employment rate 9 months after the program really, really, really high, and very, very good sign of the strong, solid base that work integrated learning can provide. Also, the importance of this holistic approach and careful approach when approaching job seekers, such populations such as refugees, really adopting this trauma-informed approach to help leverage their resiliency, their adaptability for their job searching. Also engaging not just with the job seekers, but engaging with employers as well, and helping employers, as I said, build up their EDI capacity has proven to be very, very important. So going forward, we will continue to work and partner with the SMEs and trying to offer more of these focused versions of ADAPT, if you will, focusing on newcomers, trying to scale this up. And the other very important point is continuing to collect more and more disaggregated data, because newcomers, as we all know, is a very, very diverse population. So the more disaggregated data we have, the better able we'll be to really address very specific gaps that different subpopulations, if you will, are facing. And with that, I say thank you very much. Merci beaucoup.
Thank you. Merci, Juan. That sounds very, very exciting. And I'm sure a lot of people are looking forward to the Q&A. There is one question there that you can have a look at while we're doing the other presentation. And everybody feel free also still to put questions in the Q&A for Juan as we keep going. I will share Alma's presentation. Just a second. Now I have to. Okay, why does it do that? That is weird. Now I have to share my desktop. It does not choose the, but I can bring it up this way. Great. Can you see the, Alma, can you see it?
Yes, yes, I can.
Fantastic. All right, all over to you.
All right, thank you, Matthias. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Alma Betancourt. I will be presenting today on TSLIP's, the Toronto South Local Immigration Partnership 2024 report entitled Digital Literacy Gaps in the Newcomer Service Sector. The Toronto South LIP is a community collaboration that brings together stakeholders located in Toronto South. The main goal is to develop local settlement strategies that coordinate and enhance service delivery to newcomers while promoting innovation and efficient use of resources. The group is one of 5 LIPs in Toronto and a consortium of 3 partner organizations: the Neighborhood Group Community Services, Wood Green Community Services, the organization that I work for, and the Canadian Center for Victims of Torture. Partnerships have continued to grow over the years, and currently we have 69 members. The Digital Literacy Gap project was developed by one of TSLIP's working groups, the Newcomer Services Collaboration Working Group, which seeks to address issues affecting access to service for newcomers. So I will present, this is a little bit of a presentation overview. Next slide, please, Matthias. The presentation will be broken down, as you can see in the slide. I will provide some background on the work TSLIP's Newcomer Services Collaboration Working Group does, and how digital literacy gaps was identified as an area in our sector that needed further investigation and insights, especially how it became a critical necessity caused by the pandemic and the necessary shift service providers had to make immediately after COVID-19, happened. The report also highlights what the current situation is and the pervasive gaps that still exist in our sector 4 years later. I will provide a timeline of the methodology used to create the report, the challenges and barriers we uncovered, but also promising practices and recommendations that came about from this project. All right. So the COVID pandemic forced the newcomer service sector, and this is, everybody in this call probably knows this, to immediately pivot programs and services to online formats, which you'll remember most of us didn't know anything about at the time. Frontline workers had to resort literally overnight to provide services online and even on the phone. Attempting to navigate the provision of services and programs during the pandemic not only brought new issues of digital literacy to the forefront, but it also highlighted pre-existing ones. It exacerbated the precarious conditions of the existing tools most service providers had at the time. This has had a compounding impact on newcomers. The innovative ways that service providers, grassroots, and community-based groups came up with set the standard and became a critical aspect of current service provision of the newcomer serving sector. The scale of the transition and the urgency with which it took place also highlighted structural and operational challenges that many service providers still face in delivering adequate care and services to newcomers. Access to technology and transition in the sector to hybrid service delivery has received considerable attention since the pandemic. Our working group noted digital literacy it's still an area of concern in need of increased attention and action by organizations and funders alike. Now, almost 4 years after the pandemic hit, we still found ourselves facing some of the same issues that came to light during that time. And so to delve further into the findings of the report, I wanted to provide a definition of what digital literacy is. As you can see here, a variety of skills that are necessary to effectively and safely utilize technology, and there are many. Some of them include problem solving, knowing how to protect sensitive information. Do we know if a source is credible? Do we have the confidence to navigate all the different digital platforms and technologies? As hybrid models became standard, barriers have continued to intensify for those lacking digital access or skills, such as older individuals, those with low technological skills or limited language proficiency. This set of skills mentioned here, ability to solve problems and manage data using technology, being able to engage with new technologies, knowing the rights and responsibilities and opportunities they create, and just to be connected as a community in the digital world are an intrinsic part of society today. Not having any knowledge about technology deepens the gaps between those who can and the ones who cannot. Okay, so next slide, please. So the initial stage of our report included an extensive literary review. Articles, publications, academic research papers focused on encouraging digital literacy amongst newcomers, low-income, youth, and marginalized groups. It included studies and promising practices from community initiatives in providing training and creating more accessible digital literacy across Canada. Our lit review findings highlighted how having a strong digital literacy foundation is critical for social, civic, and economic participation. The compounding effect of lower digital literacy added to the barriers newcomers experienced before, during, and following their arrival to Canada, and then being left further behind when lacking access and knowledge in trying to engage with government and various essential services. What we highlight here on this slide are the most persistent barriers for newcomers: no digital gadgets, not able to access software or even internet services, distance from locations that may offer free access to devices or programming, no childcare. Similarities are also found with service providers and community groups supporting newcomers with digital literacy: no funding or resources to have technological tools on site, not knowing themselves how to use these tools or be trained to use them, organizations not being fully clear on how to provide digital literacy training, keeping up with changes in technology. The methodology that we used, next slide, please. So our project. The digital literacy gaps in the newcomer serving sector was a one-year project, and it was split into different phases: bouts of information gathering, data analysis, drafting the report, and recommendations. As I mentioned before, we did an extensive lit review. Complementary to that, information gathering in this phase included reviewing other resources, past reports, promising past and current practices, accessing internet or technology, and other different things. Alongside the gathering of written resources, an in-person roundtable was convened. As you can imagine, participation in in-person gatherings was trepid. to say the least, in the immediate time after the pandemic. We had almost a dozen representatives from key agencies and local grassroots organizations within the newcomer serving sector, tasked with identifying persistent gaps within the sector and also promising practices. Limited participation greatly reduced the number of voices whose experiences could inform the discussion. However limited though, the valuable insights recorded still shed light in the newcomer experiences they serve. In order to add to the insights collected at the in-person roundtable, an online survey was sent out to other newcomer surveying organizations. We expanded on the questions asked, still with a focus on what programming and services and supports are being offered and what gaps are persisting. Next slide, please. The quantitative and qualitative data collected from the in-person roundtable and the TISLIP partnership survey was subsequently analyzed. We compiled key findings and took to the task to draft the final report. We formed a working group subcommittee to put it all together, and after many revisions, a final report was drafted. The final report, for which you will see a copy attached to the presentation, was in turn disseminated amongst relevant decision makers and stakeholders. The main objective was to find opportunities in order to change how digital literacy programming is funded, designed, and offered to newcomers. The report came out before IRCC's CFP, which interestingly enough included a lot more questions and inquiries on digital literacy and digital skill building programming for the next IRCC funding contract. Major findings. A lot of our major findings won't come as a surprise to those of you who work in this sector. Websites and portals that are essential to newcomers in general are difficult to navigate. Applying for funding is a difficult task. Accessibility barriers persist, especially to older newcomers and people with disabilities. As is the case with a lot of programming, funding restrictions compound the negative effect of not being able to access digital skills programming, and what programs are designed by different organizations. Will hybrid service delivery receive different funding in upcoming contracts? We don't know. Technology continues to evolve rapidly, and purchasing becomes more and more cost prohibitive, even for the average Canadian. Accessing resources continues to be a challenge for newcomers. For instance, for a family of newcomers, all members of the family have to share bandwidth, maybe, or maybe they have access only to one laptop or tablet in the household. It's still, an area of concern. Sorry, next slide, please. Partnership survey findings revealed more than half of respondents currently provide digital literacy programming, highlighting classes and workshops on basics such as Microsoft Office and virtual meeting platforms like Zoom or Teams. However, many responded they were not offering digital literacy programming due to a lack of resources or funding, as well as uncertainty of demand or needs from service users, only offered as needed in some cases. When it comes to newcomer surveying organization staff, interesting findings highlighted that almost 20% had not been provided any digital literacy training. About 40% received support on how to fill out forms, and half received or accessed online facilitation skills training. Promising practices that we, that were highlighted in the conversations. In the next slide, please. Places like Access Alliance, they use a digital equity screening protocol tool to assess new intakes in digital literacy skills. They have also partnered with other organizations offering online resources and training. An organization like South Asian Community Support Canada continues to collaborate with larger organizations for greater access to funding. Fair Chance Skills Development, they have a pre-employment module-based digital foundations programming. Newcomer Women's Services, their digital literacy coaches provide one-on-one training and development partnership with digital literacy support organizations, including access to laptops. And at Woodgreen, we have a dedicated digital literacy staff member who provides one-on-one sessions with newcomer clients and group sessions for digital literacy programming. He's booked solid, and he also provides training when he's available to our newcomer programs and services staff. Recommendations. It will come as no surprise that more dedicated resources and funding for more focused digital literacy programming is urgently needed. More support to access the latest gadgets, software, and internet hotspots, but instruction should also be funded. Public-private partnerships would also be a way to sponsor or ease the cost for digital literacy learning and access gaps. All newcomers, regardless of status, should be able to access newcomer services and programs. That includes digital literacy programs. At the same time, there should be dedicated funding to train frontline staff on all things digital, upgrade their skills and learning how to use devices to increase their competencies when doing their work. Centralized programming, for example, through the libraries or school boards, so service providers can partner with them for better service to newcomers. And then more information sharing amongst all involved to build, replicate, and complement promising practices around digital literacy supports. The report contains a lot more detailed information, so we encourage everyone to take a look and read in more depth all our findings. I want to close by acknowledging the incredible support of TSLP in spearheading this project, in particular Jesse Renata, who was the driving force, tying it all together and tirelessly guiding the project to completion. He was scheduled to present here with me today, but has moved on professionally to bigger things. This was a great collaborative effort, and the report is a testament to the great things that happen when collaboration and sharing ideas come to fruition. And with that, I pass it over to Matthias. Thank you.
Thank you, Alma. That was super interesting. And I'm sure there'll be questions in the Q&A for you. So yeah, everybody feel free to put your questions in the Q&A for Alma. And we'll get our last PowerPoint going. And I will ask Sophie, my dear colleague, to start us off.
Well, thank you very much, Matthias. Merci beaucoup. So this presentation is bilingual because Avenue, an online platform, I will tell you more about it, is bilingual. It offers ESL and FSL, English as second language and French as second language. So this workshop is titled Facilitating Newcomers Integration through Digital Education. Faciliter l'intégration des nouveaux arrivants par l'éducation numérique. So what's going to happen is that the PowerPoint will be in French, but I will speak in English. So this way, everybody can understand. This is also part of digital equity. Next slide, please. Thank you. So Avenue is an online learning platform designed for language program aimed at newcomers to Canada. It's primarily focused on English and French as settlement languages. And what I love about e-learning personally is that with e-learning, you're doing two things at a time. You're learning a language while mastering digital skills. So it's really the perfect combination. Avenue provides interactive tools and resources for instructors and learners. It's available for free to organizations funded by IRCC or even the MLIT SD, Ministry of Labor, Immigration, Training and Skills Development. So here are the key milestones of the project, les étapes clés du projet. So Avenue has been here for a long time, but not maybe under the name of Avenue. So we're going to give you the key milestone. 2007, so the completion of an exploratory study titled Fast Forward. In 2010, it was the initial launch of a project in Ontario under the guidance of IRCC. In 2010 as well, we deployed an educational platform and we initiated instructor training. In 2014 saw the expansion of the program to a national scale. It was completely IRCC funded. In 2014 as well, we saw the introduction of a province-specific initiative in Ontario. That was MLIT SD funded this time. 2020, it was the official relaunch of the platform named Avenue. So you must all know, maybe you know avenue.ca. It was only in English at that time. And then in 2021, linguistic and cultural adaptation of the content into French to create Formation Avenue, the training for instructors. Oops. Matthias disappeared, but that's okay because I can share the presentation. Okay. Yeah, so where was I? Excuse me for this. Yeah, so in 2021, so Avenue expanded to a Francophone side, and 2024 was is very new, like we launched it 6 weeks ago, and at this conference, there was a workshop this morning about Can Avenue and the IT standards. So canavenue.ca is an online platform. It's like a sister to Avenue, but this time it's open to anyone, any newcomers, regardless of their status, regardless of, so their status or if they have a teacher or not. This is supposed to fill the gap because in language training, we have a lot of a waiting list, as you may know, whether in English, ESL or FSL. So they started Can Avenue with thousands of resources for learners to start until they get a spot in an online or face-to-face class. So the project goals. The project goal, obviously, is to increase socioeconomic integration of newcomers through language learning, but also through daily communication. As a goal, we like to offer many interactive modules and tutorial and also continuous assessment. Also, we reduce the gaps and the barriers to the learning thanks to a flexible and personalized access. I remember with one colleague one day we were looking at when learners were connecting, and we saw that they connect at midnight, maybe after their shift or something. So it's really flexible, and this is what makes it fair to everyone. Everybody can learn at their own pace in their own time. Also, what we really like, and that's a very dear goal to Rob, the founder of New Language Solution, is to improve the work-life balance of teachers as well, instructors, teachers, thanks to a more efficient teaching. So so that's a goal that's very dear to us in New Language Solution. And we obviously, with e-learning, we encourage the learners to be independent and it's self-assessed. Sometimes those activities are self-assessed, and they can do it in a very safe digital environment. That's also another thing, because if you Google, any activity, you don't know which website you will get, to learn a language. Avenue offers like a safe place for them. Now Matthias is back. Oops, sorry, we can't hear you, Matthias.
Sorry, I didn't unmute. I had to switch to my iPad because my internet went out on my computer, but on the iPad it connected. So thank you, Sophie, for taking over showing the slideshow. I'm sure some of you have seen this infographic before. It's from the Status of Women in Canada, but there's lots of iterations of that infographic. The first two that you see here already suggests that we should be providing supports so that everybody can see across the barrier. And the last panel shows the belief that obstacles should be removed entirely to achieve equity. Unfortunately, removing barriers entirely is often not a realistic option in an online environment. That's just the nature of the beast. And many people have, of course, difficulties using technologies to do what they need to do. We've heard a lot from Alma already that. So that's great. So I can build on that. Next slide, please, Sophie. Thank you. When we talk about equity in terms of digital access, or what is often referred to as the digital divide, we have come to think of at least 3 levels. I like to call them layers, maybe even interrelated layers, because I don't think they're necessarily built on top of each other, but they're all important. First, you must have a current device, of course, and reliable internet access that you can afford. Then you need opportunities to learn and practice digital literacy skills in a secure and supported environment. Alma gave us quite a little bit of food for thought for that already, and our presentation is about that second layer a lot, and about the third layer, which so finally you would be in a situation where you hopefully can benefit from your use of the internet, and then that can take can take shape in various ways, like resources you need to access that are more and more online, appointments that you need to make in an online booking system, for examples, or very often for newcomers, forms that you need to fill out to receive services that you're entitled to. And next slide, please. Thank you, Sophie. So how does Avenue, the online system that Sophie was talking about, and that's accessible across the country for link programs and click programs, so the French side of the link language instruction for newcomers in Canada program. So all French language program, federally funded language programs outside of Quebec. So there's 3 things that we want to talk to you about today, or that we want to show you: activities to practice transferable digital skills. Then we're also using, like link programs do generally, so we build on that, authentic documents in the context of newcomer settlement. And what's really important is also that we promote networking to encourage peer support, especially in an online environment that often falls by the side. But it's an integral part what Avenue is providing, and the theory behind it. Here you see an example from a couple of screenshots from the from Avenue. One is an upload screen, something that many newcomers face on a regular basis. I don't even want to talk about the upload everything in one PDF that always throws me for a loop. But even just uploading one document or whatever you have, or scanning, printing, all these kind of things, signing something, scanning it again. Oh my God. Then and also there's an activity in there where learners can register, record enregistrer, and listen again to to practice listening and speaking. From research that I've done, I can say, and that's I think an interesting little side note, is the research we've done within the project a few years ago is that we've asked learners in a link program if they prefer in-person or online learning online, and they've said they prefer in-person, which didn't surprise us. When we asked them why, they said it's because we want to practice listening and speaking. When we prompted again to ask them, do you care if you get opportunities to practice speaking in person or speaking and listening online, they said, no, we don't care. We just want the opportunities, which was a very important, interesting thing, because we first asked a very limited question, and until we prompted, we didn't really get the answer. Next slide, please, Sophie. Here is an example of a real-life exercise, an intermediate level on the theme of housing. It's from a government website. Learners download a standard lease and a guide in PDF format. Many of us are familiar with that or are trying to be familiar with it. And then they fill in certain parts of the lease and save the guide in that activity. So a very authentic activity. And another one is on the next slide, another real life exercise, intermediate level, on the theme of housing for learners who would like to sublet their accommodation but encounter difficulties. They use a website to find the right form to submit a request, fill out the request, provide details, multiple steps involved here. I won't get into those, but I think many of you are familiar with those, what it takes to do that. As per instructions, of course, the learners do not need to send it to the government. They just need to send it in a folder and send it to their instructor. But it's a very authentic way to do it nonetheless. Sophie, there's quite a few more examples we could share, right?
Thank you very much, Matthias. Yeah, so we were showing you how we teach digital literacy in any topic. That's the two-in-one I was telling you about, but also to reassure and also to go further, we have also developed units under the theme digital citizenship. So we have a few units. I'm only showing here a screenshot of 6 units. But one is communicating online or digital access, digital communication, digital security as well, and internet business. So we also have a 100% focused digital citizenship focused unit, which were very popular when they were developed. I think we have about 10, 12. So here I'm showing only 6. So these are very, very hands-on activities, and it also, like with the digital security one, it gives them food for thought as well. It opens their mind as well, maybe to go further. So we just give a little example, and then we encourage the learners to go further and to be aware of what's going on online. Also, we're teaching like netiquette, or those things that are appropriate, not appropriate, being safe online. And so this contributes to narrowing the gap. And here I have, yes. So here is an example of what you can find in those units. So like, for example, the unit communicating online. So here, first of all, we wanted to highlight, as you can see, the little logos on the side of the activities. So it shows the variety of activities we have. So we have forums, we have self-corrected activities, and we have different types of activities. So this is Hotpot, H5P, these are SCORMs, forum, quiz, this is a survey. So we make sure that that learners see different types of activities, but also real life examples. Like here, I'm going to show you. So this is an example of a forum. It's like an icebreaker forum. So this says, say hi to your colleagues. But here we wanted to teach forum and online chatting. I don't know if you've noticed if it's the same for you, but like my insurance company, when I want to call the insurance, they usually say, hey, we'll send you a link so you can chat with us. So the chatting now is like, is becoming more and more present in every digital thing you have to do online. We also have the chat box, of course, but when you have a real person in a forum, so it's better. So that's why, so here we're encouraging them to say hi, but in the instruction, we also say, hey, an answer to one of your colleagues. So we encourage the answer. We also encourage them, okay, if you've made a mistake, this is how you can delete it or edit your message. So we're teaching again through language learning, we also teaching digital literacy skills. And then back to you, Matthias.
Thank you, Sophie. So we also have some other innovative projects that are under the umbrella of New Language Solutions and the Avenue Learn IT to Teach project. As you saw in the timeline before, we've been around for over 15 years, so there's stuff that happens, gaps that we needed to fill and needed to address. One of them is that weren't really any standards for technology-enhanced language learning out there. So with a group of experts, we developed those, and they were launched this year. And IRCC expressed, and also the Canadian Language Benchmark Center expressed interest to keep an eye on those. So that might be interesting for some of the participants here to also look into those, and you can find those on the main Avenue portal, avenue.ca. Another thing that we launched in the last month but worked towards for a couple of years is an independent learning platform, canavenue.ca, which has been live now for about a month, which is targets quite a number of groups. So there is no IRCC eligibility. There's no, so it has a lot less barriers than to get into Avenue. For Avenue, you have to be in a link program or a click program. Here, this can be used either as additional activities, independent learning activities for learners who are in Avenue, but also learners who are on waiting lists for the link program, or who are in other IRCC funded or settlement programs that are provincially funded, where people want to direct them, or if they're asking, is there any place where I can learn more about settlement in Canada, and do some activities or something like that. And we're also working towards to get in touch with organizations that cater to newcomers before they arrive in Canada, so they can get a step ahead of things. And the third one that we wanted to highlight is a volunteer program. So training volunteers for link programs. That's called TBLV, TESOL Basics for Language Volunteers, or la FIB in the French counterpart, which is l'ABC du FLS pour les instructeurs bénévoles. And do you want to say a couple of things about that? Because that's really your domain, Sophie, and then I'll come back.
Oh, thank you very much, Matthias. So yeah, so LAFIB and TPLV is a program that trains volunteers, and those volunteers are going to do what? They're going to support newcomers learning language. They could be the volunteers could facilitate a circle of a conversation circle. They could do one-on-one, and then they could also help online or in an in-person classroom. So we had a workshop this morning about it. I think it was recorded. So if you want to know more, we will give you our contact details on the next slide. Thank you, Matthias.
Thank you, Sophie. I was hoping you're going to put in a plugin for the recording. Excellent. So yeah, here's our contact information. You can write to us at support@avenue.ca or soutien@commercial-avenue.ca. The portal Avenue is at avenue.ca. We also have a portal that's going to be phased out, but there's lots of stuff there, which is learnit2teach.ca. And there's a YouTube channel, and there's a bit.ly link. We do have, I know you can click on those links, but the presentations you can download from the Feedloop from the Feedloop page, and then you can easily click on those. So thank you to all the panelists. And how much time do we have left for?
We have 15 minutes.
Oh, fantastic. Thank you, Sophie. So let's see if there is, or why don't you, Juan, since there was one for you in the Q&A, why don't you start us off with answering the one question that's there already, if you don't mind.
I answered already. It was providing some links. The question was whether the ADAPT program was open to newcomers nationwide, and yes. So that's I imagine everyone can see the Q&A, and yeah, I put the links both for Adapt for newcomers, for a waiting list. They're both on waiting lists at the moment, and for Adapt Core as well. Like as I mentioned, the programs are open to everyone. So
okay, that's great, Juan. I see there's another one coming here from Amit Taha. I hope I'm pronouncing the name correctly. And asking if the presentation will be available only in English and French or French only. So the presentation slides, we provided them. There is an English presentation slide also on the Feedloop chat for our presentation, so for the third one. And the other ones were both in English. I don't think there's a French version of it. But the third one, ours, has the one that you saw, the bilingual one, and an English only one. And I hope that answers your question. And as we wait for a little bit more, maybe I spoke too soon. My question to Alma. The question was. Sorry, I only see that one line here. Maybe we can get a little bit more detail on that from the participant there. That would be great. In the meantime, maybe I can ask Alma a question. How can local community groups and newcomer agencies work together to create and run digital skills programs that help older newcomers and those who don't speak English well?
I think actually the topic of collaboration and coming up with ideas, working together, has been the topic of the Pathway to Prosperity conference today, this week. I think coming up with ideas, with different organizations about figuring out what the gaps are and how we can partner to help each other and help the clients, close the gaps. So I think the knowledge that a lot of, like we saw in the Promise and Practices, the knowledge that a lot of, very, very empiric knowledge that we've gathered in the circumstances that we've experienced in the last little bit have given us a lot of knowledge. And then organizations like yours who provide the tools, it would be a good way to partner together to serve the clients best. So we just have to get creative, but somebody has to start the ball rolling. So having these conversations, and like when we were talking here, the presentations, they all match. We all have something to offer. So having these conversations and putting this together is what we need.
Yes. And you're right, there's lots out there in the ecosystem, but there's a lot of siloing going on too. So the collaboration is really important. So the participant before just clarified the question for you, Alma. How do you get the funding for one-on-one digital instructors? I'm sorry. How would you get funding for one-on-one digital instructors? So
this was part of the the IRCC contract that is closing. So this was even pre-pandemic, and it is in sending that information to the funders. We don't know what the new iteration of the contracts will look like, but it starts with requests for funding.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. And there's a question that I think is to all of us. So I'll read it out and maybe I can say a couple of things and then maybe hand it off. Do you see different digital skills gaps between generations? Different gaps for youth compared to older folks? Do you also find different approaches work for different groups? At Avenue, we mostly work with different CLB levels. So the content is designed to different levels and not necessarily different generations. But I have a feeling, Juan, correct me if I'm wrong, maybe you have some insights or some data on that?
Adapt is geared also for youth. I mean, these days we're youth, and sometimes I wish soon, like standing up, that I'll fall back into youth. But anyway, it's so youth, that's a focus of ADAPT, but other research, though, that I think has also indicated that, yes, there is this gap. And it's really interesting, some of these solutions that we see, for example, in some other research that is focusing and working on skilled trades and other sectors that have been disrupted by technological advances and so on. We do see very much that gap, but some of the solutions are super interesting, like reverse mentoring, right? Where you pair up an older worker with a younger worker to do that reverse mentoring, and that some really, really creative solutions that are coming from different kinds of skills training programs. So.
Okay, that's yeah, that's fantastic. Thank you. There's another question: how can we help clients with language barriers in digital literacy? That's a big question. Well, I think we get that often, and maybe I can hand it off to Sophia. I do know from what I see a little bit one step removed as a researcher and evaluator. In the lower level CLBs, there is a lot of teachers who use, for example, WhatsApp and not necessarily an LMS, or use certain parts of the LMS once they get the learners over that hump that you need to register for something. And there's lots of learning from that. But we've also learned that it is possible. It is definitely possible. It takes a lot of support and wraparound support for sure, but it is possible. Is there anything, Sophie, that comes to your mind that you could share?
Yes, thank you very much, Matthias. I'm going to answer this question and the previous one about, do we see difference between generations? So I would say with newcomers, do not make assumption. For example, I've already heard of a Syrian 22-year-old man, right? So you would think, oh, he's young, he's going to be so, attuned with technology and everything. But he had spent the last 10 years in a refugee camp, where he imagined the last 10 years, we saw the iPad in the last 10 years, so we saw in Western countries, but he had never seen an iPad. He didn't know what a touch screen was because he hadn't known. So do not make any assumption. It's not because they're young that they would know, because you don't know you don't know about the life they had just before coming. So do not make assumptions. So that's one thing. And then to answer your question, Matthias, we have on Avenue even, sorry, I forgot, alphabetization in French and literacy, yeah, in CLB. So we do have literacy and alphabetization units. So online. So it can definitely be done online. And like I said earlier, then this is a 2-in-1. They're learning online. So you can absolutely learn reading and writing online. So we do have units to cater for any level, even the pre-CLB, even the pre-NCLC, because they can do, because it's interactive, it's actually really good to learn how to read and type, simply how to type. Or, because they're going to need those skills to, like Matthias was saying, one day we had a conversation and he was saying, just to make an appointment, you need to pre-book the appointment. And so they will need it sooner or later. So let's teach 2-in-1. So now I give the mic back to you, Matthias.
Can I just chime in on a couple of those responses? Yeah, because one of the things that we do in settlement is we conduct a needs assessment. We don't do that for digital literacy, and I wish we could. We've created programming sometimes, like we'll have people show up to a workshop, and then being there, we realize that they're at very different levels. Some people don't, we need to teach them how to create an email address, and other people are like, more advanced. So having the ability to at least do that needs assessment for digital skills, that would be very helpful. And then we can figure out where do we need to start, to put in the training hours and the
I think you're right. And my experience also is that also with seniors, a lot of it depends on really basing it on, and that could be the good entry point, basing on what their needs are, right? And if their needs is to have, let's say, a video calls with their grandchildren or something like that, then why not focus on that? I've seen in many cases when it's a meaningful activity and not just do something on the internet or something like that, or if no typing is required, then no typing is required. Sometimes also using a Padlet is much more, because it's tactile and there's no keyboard involved, and you can, whatever, launch Skype or whatever, and then talk to your grandkids. And I've seen in many cases, if it's a meaningful activity, then the learning can happen. There's a couple of more questions. One is, if our settlement services are funded provincially to support refugee claimants, is there any possibility for these digital language tools to be available provincially funded settlement service providers? So for our project, I can say in Ontario, we are also funded by the Ontario Ministry, so it would be available. Avenue would also be available to the ESL, FSL programs funded by the province. I believe we're in talks with other provinces like BC to also make that happen. But I'll let Juan and Alma, of course, talk for themselves, because I have no idea.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of the adapt, the language, it's not specifically for languages, and I think that's been part of the conversation we're having in the background, is the ways to connect these various projects. And I think in that connectivity of I think there's also the space for that creativity in terms of funding. But adapt the language the language training is something that I think would be a powerful complement to it. So
yeah, for the in terms of link programs, I mean, because it is eligibility is that one word that ruins us all. But for more casual learning tools, we it's open to everyone. So what we say in settlement, and I'm sure that most people here on this call do that as well, is like, we don't say no to anyone. We, if there's group sessions, everybody comes. Yeah, it's that eligibility criteria that prevents us sometimes from.
Yeah, it's a problem. Thank you, Alma. Thank you, Juan. And one, I think, maybe final comment and ending up with the question. As you all know, digital world navigation is a risky journey because it comes with security issues. It's very important for newcomers to at least understand the basics of internet or devices security. For someone who is starting digital literacy from scratch, do you think it's a good idea to start with the basics of safety first before navigating to the operational skills they needed? Of course, I would completely agree. I believe a lot of link teachers and click teachers do exactly that. They have a lot of conversations about it. A lot of programs have transition courses that also guide students to and also take a little bit the burden off the teacher, because Link has a continuous intake, and that's difficult if you constantly have people, or at a regular basis, new students coming into your class. There's also programs that provide services a little bit akin to what Alma was describing, that it can be called or referred to as digital navigators. So people who specific staff who is specialized in helping people navigate the internet, and I believe that's also one of their tasks, to talk about safety and security. That's what I can contribute, but I'll open the floor to the other panelists.
Well, if Alma, you want to talk, or I have something to, maybe 30 seconds. I showed previously on the screenshot our digital citizenship units, We talked about digital security, because yes, it's not evident for everyone. And if you're new to it, definitely, even something simple as check who the email is from, check the email address, you know, even those simple things. So they are covered in those digital citizenship units. And also we have just released in March what we call TEL, teaching. Matthias, I forgot what TEL means. Anyway, we released
yes,
IT standards.
technology enhanced language learning.
Learning, yes. So we released 3 booklets, one for programs, one for teachers, one for learners. And these are IT standards. And of course, security, online safety is covered in absolutely every, in the three topics. And yeah, and they are available in French as well. So yeah, it's called TEL or Allotech. Now, Alma and Juan, if you want to answer that very interesting question, thank you very much, Philmon.
Yeah, I would say that in the work, you know, when we work in newcomer programs and services, it's a given that you start from, you know, assuming that we're starting from zero. So all of those elements of safety, security, alongside any skills or any language skills that are taught, the assumption is we're going to start teaching that from the very, very basics. So yeah, safety and security is a given in any training.
Absolutely. And just one final, just one quick point. It's also something that we're developing both, but the way that we're thinking of it is weaving it into the other stuff anyway, because it's kind of like, it's the kind of issue that cybersecurity that spreads around. So it can be woven into not just the first and then the rest.
Mm-hmm.
And not only for the work with job seekers, but for ADAPT, also with the work that we're doing with employers, right? So the kinds of trainings that we made available, especially for SMEs. And this is really important for SMEs that have very low capacity on all fronts, including on how do they also adapt to the technological changes. So be it cybersecurity on how to, and like how to most effectively use AI for your business and stuff. So in ways that really connect and help enhance all this work that we're all talking about. I think there's, but again, it's in a way that can be woven into it and just energize all of this work, I think.
That's great. Thank you, Juan. I like to end on the word energize. I love that. We still can stick around, I guess, until we get kicked off, but I'd like to thank my fellow panelists, and also Kion for helping us through the thick and thin here, and of course the participants, and for your interest and your very important questions. So yeah, we're still around until we get kicked off, maybe a few more minutes. I'm not sure if we're out of time already or if we still have a few minutes, but we're still here.
Thank you, Matthias. I will have to go because I'm presenting a poster in a few, in 30 minutes. So I will have to go and get my poster ready for the conference. Thank you so much. We had a lot of attendees. So thank you so much. It's a very dear cause to us and to Matthias. So I'm grateful that you all came for that topic. Have a good evening.
Thank you, Sophie. Good luck with the poster presentation.
Thank you.
And yeah, that's great. Thank you for the thank yous in the chat and the Q&A. Excellent.